Hey, you guys, picking right up from the last message, I talked about how Yahweh in the garden, Adam, Eve, and the serpent of wisdom are all progressions of consciousness, where Jesus said, "Be harmless as doves and wise as serpents." In ancient times, the serpent was a symbol of wisdom. So ancients wrote this idea, and I talked about how the rabbis, because they were in a nationalism, or shall we say, using Yahweh as nationalism, state of being, rather than loving people for who they are. Because of the state of their heart, the narrative, when they see everybody who seeks the visions of God will receive the visions of God. Seek and you will find. But the finding part is based on your state of consciousness at the time. So if you are into white nationalism, Christian nationalism, Jewish nationalism, Islamic nationalism, you are in the inverse of God. God is burning love for all humanity. As it says in the book of Revelation, every tribe, every nation, every tongue, meaning every language, is the glory of God. So when the rabbis wrote this, they saw Eve as sinning. So anyway, check out that video, this last one I did, called Mystical Eve, the Bible as your autobiography. It's your life story. So I'm going to pick up from where I left off, where Eve was giving birth to Abel and Cain. So we go first to Matthew 24. Jesus said that the Son of Man will be revealed, not in the desert wanderings. We've all had our legalistic desert wanderings. The Son of Man will not be found in the secret chamber. Some of us, through 10, 15, 20 years of extreme dedication to Christ, will enter that Holy of Holies within, the secret chamber within, and really find the essence of who Spirit is there. But Jesus said that the Son of Man, during the change of the age, in that case from law to grace, here it is 2,000 years later, the same thing is happening again, the change of the age from grace to equality. That during the change of the age, the Son of Man won't be found in the desert wanderings. If they say he is in the desert, don't believe them. If they say he is in the secret chamber, don't believe them. He said, for it's going to be found as the light shines from the east, catch this, from the east all the way to the west. And he compared it to lightning that you see from the ends of your region. But also remember that a new day begins in the east. The sun rises in the east and sets in the west. Now go from there, take a breath, catch that, catch the metaphor. So what he's saying there is, it's not found so much during the season of wilderness or even of the promised land of the dwelling in your Holy of Holies, your inner chamber within. It's found in the day that begins with an illumination, a word, a logos, that is rhema. You taste and you see it. It begins in the east of a new day, and it ends in the west when the sun sets, as the word becomes flesh in you, as the word becomes flesh in you, not just in your spirit anymore. It steps out from the Holy of Holies, and Revelation 21, the feminine energy, the bride, descends and acts and lives and tastes and sees through the human expression. The west is where the sun sets, the completion of a day. Now, Luke 17:22 is very important to understand Cain and Abel. So Luke 17:22, Jesus said, even though Matthew 24 is the day of the Son of Man revealed in the electromagnetic field that science can measure, that goes 6 feet in diameter around every human heart, that's the cloud that you saturate either with nationalism or love. And Jesus said those who fed him when he was hungry, clothed him when he was naked, and visited him in prison by visiting, clothing, and feeding those who were in need. He called it the least of these, the marginalized people. When you help the marginalized people, Jesus said, now I'm going to promote you. Go to my right. And you who did not feed and clothe me and visit me, depart from me. I never knew you. Go to my left. So there's a constant, perpetual purging of tribalism for or shall we say hierarchy, or social class warfare, to the place of harmonization where you see God in all, instead of seeing God only in your enclave. Your enclave, your conclave, your priesthood, your church, your ethnicity, your orientation only. And you start to see that same treasure in everyone else, just like Solomon did in 1 Kings 11. He could see the same treasure in the women he fell in love with who were from other nations, and he built abodes for the other gods. Yep. And of course, the rabbis were in a nationalistic state of heart when they wrote the narrative in 400 BC and 500 BC. So of course they wrote it in as a sin. Of course they wrote it in as Eve bringing a greater level of the fruit of the Spirit as a sin, as forbidden fruit, because it is forbidden to the previous state of existence. So Eve, when she gives, and really I elaborate big time on all of those things in the previous video, Mystical Eve, the Bible as your autobiography. So that was just a quick review. So Eve then gives birth to Cain and Abel. And remember Luke 17:22, Jesus said there would be many days of the Son of Man, not just one, many days. There was the day in the collective mankind. There are days also, just like there's the day of legalism, there's the day of grace in your life. There's the day of if you do happen to go beyond grace theology for your sect or your religion, where you're full resting, full dependence on the Holy Spirit as your righteousness, not your works. Well, those are two different days, but then you go into universalism, or Carlton Pearson's inclusion gospel. There's another day that is an illumination, the sun rising. Some people heard Carlton Pearson preaching, and they could bear witness to it. So they went to the east. They went to the east and helped build a habitation of mind, a habitation of heart, a habitation of and they built the architecture of the inner man. That's the city. That's where Carlton Pearson and tens of thousands of people, that's where they live. That's the city they live in now. It's not a geographical location. It's a spiritual location. So those who once lived in the city of legalism moved to the city of grace, to the city of universalism, where you see the God core in each religion and each person. And some of us, like myself, moved from that into the city, the habitation of activism, to lift the marginalized and to fulfill Jesus' command to clothe, feed, and visit. To lift the marginalized people groups, like the vision of BLM. The 5-point manifesto of BLM is lifting up the elderly, the disabled, the Palestinian, the Ukrainian, black and brown, gay and trans people here. And so collectively, prehistory, you have the matriarchal age. Men were submitted to women. Then you have the patriarchal age. Women submitted to men. But we're going to come into the age of Aquarius, where the man and the woman are doing the woman's work. That's the diagram for the age of Aquarius is a man bearing the water pitcher. So that in ancient days, that was a woman's work. So where the spirit, the thought sperm, the spirit is I, the Lord, see the end from the beginning. That's the positivity tribe. The speak only what you want to see happen. And that's where you say of the negative experiences, I'm not, those aren't factual things. Those are just things I'm experiencing, but they're not really happening. It's illusion, and the only real me is the spirit. That's the age of Jesus. That's the age of Pisces. Two fish separate. You only live in one. The single eye of Jesus, you only live in your spirit. You don't count anything you go through in your human self, or the humanity aspect of yourself. You don't count it to be even real, because you are doing like Jesus, who, for the joy set before him, endured the cross. You get it? Okay. So but the side effect was that we never really grew as people. We grew in our spiritual gifting. We grew in our mantle of spirit. We grew in our spiritual fortification and strength, but we did not, as I found out over and over and over and over again, starting in 2009, none of us that were in the prophetic church, the New Apostolic Reformation, which restored the office of the apostle and the prophet, the Assembly of God friends of mine, the Christian and Missionary Alliance friends of mine, I found out we all were dysfunctional as humans. No human development, because we saw humanity as an illusion and only spirit was real. So that was the side effect of separating the two fish. The separation of the two fish was the diagram for the age of Pisces. So as we bring the two together, we go to the east for a new day. So Cain and Abel were born from Eve, the mother of all living. So again, in the last message, I talked about the soul realm with her critical thinking skills, understands what has grown up, what have you produced, what fruit have you produced. When the wheat and the chaff, Jesus said in the parable of the wheat and the tare, or the wheat and the chaff, when they grow up, you can see both plainly. And that's when you can pick the chaff without destroying the wheat. So when we go through a course of very legalistic, damnation-oriented, fear-based type of Christianity, once it matures, you can see the wheat and the chaff. And that's when you go to the east and start fortifying. Cain went to the east, right, and found people there and helped build a city in the east because it was time for a new day. That's all metaphor. Eve, Cain, Abel, these are all aspects of you. These are not literal people that lived. And this is not a history lesson. I'm giving you a depiction of the architecture of your inner man. Cain and Abel are parts of us, and spirit and soul. So there's a spirit awareness in Abel, and there's a self-awareness in Cain. And so when we gave birth long ago in the age of Jesus to spirit and soul, and said along with the Apostle Paul in Galatians 2:20, I am crucified, and only Christ lives through me. Cain is crucified, and only Abel lives through me. When you did that, Cain kills Abel. Eventually, he said all the great prophets and evangelists, televangelists, most of them had some kind of a scandal, some type of a fall, found to be sexual deviance and everything. Because when we call half the image of God, the human part, when we call it illusion, we call it sin, we call it deplorable sin, then what happens is it becomes sin because you call it sin. It becomes a voice of complaining because you said it was. Right? It becomes a control freak. It becomes all these things. So when it vows revenge, whether it's Cain killing Abel or you're Abel killing your Cain, either way, the blood is soaking on the ground, crying revenge, and it gets that revenge because everything is spirit and nothing dies. You can't kill energy. Where I'm going with this is integration. Integration. So when your Eve gives birth to a new heaven and a new earth, is not grace theology a new heaven and a new earth compared to legalistic, damnation-oriented, fear-based theology? Yep, it is. Because you according to 2 Peter 3:10, those heavens of legalism pass away. The heavens of Moses passed away for the heavens of Jesus to come. And what is earth? Earth is the personification, what people know you. The people at your job, where you work, what do they know you for? What if you were to interview the people that you work with at your job? What would they say about you? That's earth. That's what you manifest from your invisible inner man. That's what people know you as. Okay, your earth. So a new heaven and a new earth means, wow, he's got a new mark on the forehead, a new mind, and the works do follow. Mark on the head and the mark on the hand. Revelation 13, perfected religious beast, 7 heads and 10 horns. Your headship, what governs you, your headship is perfected, 7, based on the ordinances you were given from your guru, your pastor, your holy literature. The ordinances, 7 heads, 10 horns. Okay, so when we perfect something, as we see 666 is the gematria, 666 is the gematria, or shall we say the numerical value of the phrase Ark of the Covenant. When we perfect the Ark of the Covenant, the scripture says in Revelation 13, this is wisdom. This is wisdom. He who has wisdom, count that number. You come to, it's nothing more than Ephesians chapter 4, coming to the fullness of the measure of the stature of Christ. Okay, the Spirit is without end. I mean, there's no cutoff to the supply of the Spirit of Jesus Christ. And it's made more effectual by prayer. And this is something Paul said, your prayers, Paul wrote in the epistle, your prayers have granted me a greater supply of the Spirit of Jesus Christ. So the supply of the Spirit is without measure. But the architecture has a measure. Just like you can walk into someone's home and you see the Baroque architecture and the couches there and the TVs there and the kitchens there and the bedrooms there. It's the architecture of a home. But the architecture within us is Yahweh, Adam, Eve, and the serpent of wisdom. And these are all holy. These are all progressions from legalism, Yahweh in the garden, jealous God, us and them. Adam walked in that. Your spirit, your thought sperm, your thought vision walked in the cool of the day with Yahweh. So the spirit of that era. And when you walk in the spirit of an era, anything outside the parameters of that spirit, which you call the real you, that spirit, would seem forbidden. And so when Eve brings forbidden fruit, because the soul realm, she, the soul-body fusion, that's 2/3 of you, rather than the spirit, which is 1/3 of you, the soul-body fusion has critical thinking skills. And once you mature in the cool of the day, or the spirit of that era of your life, once you mature in it, you see the wheat and the chaff, and you can deal with the chaff and go to the east for a new day. Luke 17:22, many days of the Son of Man. Jesus said to the 12 apostles, some of you, not all of you, some of you standing here, here's a direct quote from Jesus, some of you standing here will not taste of death till you've seen the Son of Man. And because they were going to manifest the God or the Abba of Jesus until it grew up to fullness, or, which takes 5 to 10 years. And then the new mystery would happen. They would see the wheat and the chaff. Eve would kick in. Did God really say we should do it this way? Did God? Peter probably at some point said, when he was a manifest Son of God, he pronounced death upon a Greek couple, and he wouldn't have done that if they were a Jewish couple. As we see him having an issue with racism when he was on the housetop, and God had to knock him into a trance to tell him, hey, quit throwing shade at Gentiles, go to Cornelius's home, and in Galatians 2, we see Peter's problem with racism again. Paul publicly rebukes Peter for withdrawing from fellowshipping with Gentile people. So that was a Greek couple, probably had, if you study history, if you study anthropology, you see that probably this Greek couple, Ananias and Sapphira, had been Hellenistic Jews and then converted to Christianity through Peter's message on the day of Pentecost. But had they been Elizabeth and Zacharias, John the Baptist's parents, he wouldn't have done that. Do you really think he would have pronounced death on Elizabeth and Zacharias? He would have had a sit-down conversation and said, you know what, in this commune I'm creating, I'm really going to need everybody's 100% to make this thing work, and I'll give you your daily supplies of food and everything. And then it turns out the Grecian widows, the Greek women, Peter wasn't even supplying food. The Greek women had given up everything, but they weren't getting their daily food, so they had to rebuke Peter for that. See, so he was in a day of the Son. Peter was a manifest Son of God upon the rock. You are Peter. Upon this rock I will build my church. He really was a new foundation for grace rather than law. He was part of that new foundation, absolutely, no question about it. But Jesus called him Satan. Remember when Peter told Jesus, "No, you don't go to Jerusalem. They're going to kill you. And then how are you going to ride in and take over Rome?" He was probably still thinking something along those lines. He hadn't understood that it's all about the spirit rather than the national. And when Peter said that to Jesus, Jesus turns around and calls him Satan. Get behind me, Satan. For you savor the things of man still. You haven't grown into a being, Peter, that savors the things of God yet. Not my God. The nationalism God is what you're savoring. John chapter 8, the Pharisees fasted twice a week. They traveled the world if only for one convert. Full dedication of God. They were sons of their God. God was their father. The scriptures were what they mused upon and thought about all day long. And Jesus said in John chapter 8, your father is the devil, and the lusts of your father you will do. They were filtering their God through nationalism rather than through love for all. They needed to go to the east of a new day, a new illumination that Jesus was presenting to them lavishly and abundantly, and then he would say, you missed your day of visitation, and now your house is left unto you desolate. So there's a kairos time then where you just don't have a lifetime to get this. You do in between ages, in between 2,000 to 3,000 year periods, you have a lifetime to understand the mystery of God. But when it's the change of the age, it's a kairos moment, boom, it comes and goes. The change happens quickly. By 200 AD, all polytheism and all monotheism had ended the animal sacrificial system, because that day was over, and it was time no more for law and animal sacrifice and blood atonement. Now it was time for grace, identifying yourself as spirit, age of Pisces. Look only through the one fish, not through the other fish, not through the flesh. It's not time for integration yet, okay? Integration is what we're going to come to now. So when Eve, the mother of all living, that's when Peter, let's say when his Eve, let's just hypothetically say his Eve state of consciousness kicked in. And that's when he would say, did God really tell me to pronounce death on Ananias and Sapphira? His critical thinking skills probably kicked in. Did God really tell me to tell the sorcerer who wanted to give me money for the anointing that he was a child of the devil? You know, when Eve kicks in, you start saying, did God really say that I need to dot every I and cross every T in a legalistic fear of God? No matter what your path is, when it matures, you're going to see not only the wheat harvested, the good, beautiful wheat, which will for sure be there on any path, in any religion, but you're also in maturity going to see the chaff. And so perhaps Peter saw the chaff because the history teachers, the anthropologists, the church history teachers claim that Peter and Paul, though they went their separate ways after the Antioch incident in Galatians 2, where Paul publicly rebukes Peter, yet later in life they would make friends. And as the epistle of Peter says, let's honor Paul, our beloved brother, who speaks things that are hard to be understood, and many wrestle to their own destruction. And Peter and Paul preached together in Rome in 62 AD, just before they were beheaded. That's when Rome began persecution of Christians because of the big fire that broke out. And probably Christians did start because they were into the apocalyptic literature. And Nero blamed the Christians, whether they did it or not. And that's when, it wasn't until 62 AD when Rome started persecuting Christians. When Jesus was before Pontius Pilate, he washed his hands because he knew he was innocent. Pontius Pilate's wife said, hey, I've suffered many things in a dream because of this man. He's innocent, have nothing to do with his death. She was crying. She was in great consternation over this person from an occupied people. Her crying over Pontius Pilate's wife, who served the pagan gods, who you guys think are devils. She served the pagan gods, was a medium or clairvoyant for the pagan gods. And the pagan gods told her that Jesus was righteous. How come Yahweh couldn't say that? Because when you move from Yahweh in the garden into Eve, you undo what was. What was God to you now becomes the devil. Satan, get behind me, when Peter said, don't go to Jerusalem. Satan, get behind me, when the Yahweh of the garden was still trying to tag along with Jesus when he entered into his public ministry. So no, not for you. I'm not changing and rocking the bread by your direction, because I'm untangling from what I knew to be God when I was 12 years old, sitting at their feet, calling it my Father. I must be about my Father's business. He's learning from the Yahweh in the garden from the rabbis at age 12. Breaks away from his parents and sits at their feet and learns from them. These are the same men. These are probably the same men who told him he was a demon. These are the same men who were teaching Jesus when he was 12 years old. Are probably the exact same men who, in John 8:48, told Jesus he was a demon-possessed Samaritan. Because when you break away from the group hates you. Yeah. So, all right. So and again, all these things I'm saying, you will understand everything I'm saying much, much better if you watch the previous video, Mystical Eve. Okay, so when Eve gives birth to a new day, when new heaven and new earth, from the original babe stage, we go from babe to adolescent to mature. To me, Yahweh in the garden is the babe stage. Eve is the adolescence. You're in junior high. You're seeing the difference between good and evil for you, what's healthy and unhealthy for you. You're rightly dividing the word of truth. You're understanding things you couldn't have seen before. 1 Corinthians 13 says, when I became a man, I put away childish things. So she's putting away the garden existence and starting to dig into she's doing shadow work. She's starting to dig into the soul realm to see what's really there, to till the ground from where she was taken. And she gives the higher level of the fruit of the Spirit, and her spirit was recreated. So when it says Eve did give Adam this fruit, and he did eat, okay, so that's what is happening there is 2 Peter 3:10. Those heavens, the heavens of Adam in the previous state of consciousness, says the heavens must pass away by a noise. So Eve brought forth a sound, a vibration, a frequency, a new word, a new logos, a new understanding of God, a new understanding of reality, a new understanding of humanity that made the heavens of Adam pass away, and a new heaven, the new Adam, the new he did eat also that same fruit. And the Yahweh of the garden, the previous state of consciousness, hated it, tried to curse them and everything. And but all of that is within us. Yahweh, Adam, Eve, the serpent. That's all you. That's all you. Everything. All those are aspects of your own being. You ever had a new, powerful revelation, but it created a war within you? Your old understanding of God was at war with your new understanding of God, and that war lasts for a little while. But eventually, you give birth to your new heaven, Abel. That's Abel, and your new earth. That's Cain. Okay. Now, in the age of Pisces that they were eventually going to come into, Cain kills Abel, and Abel swears vengeance. But Cain goes to. Do you see the point here? You have to fuse your Cain and Abel together. If you don't fuse your spirit and soul together once they're separated, so you can distinctly know what your spirit is, distinctly know what your humanity is, once they're separated, according to Hebrews 4, the Word of God is quick and powerful and sharp, separating to the dividing asunder of spirit and soul. Okay, your spirit awareness and your self-awareness have distinct frequencies, distinct vibrations, distinct unfoldings. Okay, this one's the higher self sees the end from the beginning, the vision. That's the end of John 1. Behold, an Israelite indeed, in whom is no guile. Yep, I know myself as pure righteousness, says your spirit. And then Jesus says, before Nathan even called you, I saw you sitting under the fig tree. All right? Why is that important? Because that was Jewish people would have known that from the Torah. That it's written 4 times in Torah that sitting under the fig tree, more accurately, the way they put it, was sitting under the vine and under the fig tree, was an allegory of perfect rest. No enemies. The kingdom of God has fully come. So your spirit is defined by John chapter 1, verses 48 through 51. Behold, an Israelite indeed, in whom is no guile. So you have to believe that about yourself and see that about yourself in order to reflect that about yourself. Okay? So there's grace theology right there. Spirit identity. And then it says, but you'll see greater things than these. Angels of God ascending and descending upon the Son of Man. So that's the Son of God. I am an Israelite indeed, in whom I am in covenant with God, the God that my teachers taught me, the God that my literature, my holy book, my Bible taught me. I am a son of that God. I am aligned with that God. I am one with that God. That's a first step. That's a good step to take. You have to take that step in order to take the next step. But when you go with that grace theology where you only identify as spirit, then what happens is you get a positive result, but you also see the chaff eventually. You also see the chaff of suppression. You've suppressed the human realities you were going through, some of the pain, sorrow, some of the negative emotions. You just submitted it to the higher. And when you put something underfoot like that, its blood cries for revenge. And then eventually it takes revenge. And this is where the great evangelists had scandal and fall, and especially in the prophetic church, the Elijah-less prophets. There's all this exposure is happening. And everybody's saying, see, they're all hypocrites. No, they weren't hypocrites. They just did it right. They did everything according to the formulae of the New Testament. But every testament has a side effect, and they're experiencing the side effects of the flesh. Whatever you killed, when Abel and Cain fight, because why are they fighting? Per Romans 7, Romans 7 says the spirit and the flesh fight each other. Why are they fighting? Because you separated them, and kept on living that way. You've separated your Abel and Cain and kept on living that way, so that it's a constant, flesh overtakes, and then spirit overtakes, and then flesh overtakes, and then spirit overtakes, and you're in a roller coaster. Through grace, you will establish less of that. You will establish the long game of pure peace of spirit, but then in the longer game, eventually something of that flesh is going to take revenge, and you find yourself becoming a control freak, or whatever. If Mike Bickle was having sex with a 14-year-old girl and 20 other women, and he was the greatest author of the past century on heart-to-heart intimacy with God, I would say it's not because he was a hypocrite. I think it's because he did it right. He fully put the sexual nature underfoot. and the sexual nature underfoot, per the rabbis, wrote about the mythos of Lilith, where Adam would not allow Lilith equality. So then Lilith ends up overtaking him in a different form. She goes to the cave. She runs away. She utters God's name. Because it's a woman, they called her a demon. This is in the mythos of Lilith, written by the Jewish rabbis. Many sources for this. And so she flies up in the air as a demon because they called her a demon, goes to a cave, has demon children with the demon, well, at first Azazel, and then later, a later mythos, a later rabbinical writing would have her to be the husband of Samael. Samael is the devil in Jewish lore. Azazel is a different devil. Or excuse me, is it? No, sorry. Semjaza Azazel is the devil in the book of Enoch. And so it was a different, anyway, I can't remember right offhand, but it was a different demon at the first stage, and then they rewrote the mythos, and then it was Samael that she was having children with. Anyway, those children would come back to Adam, thinking he had gotten the victory over her, and these demonic children came and overtook him through lustful dreams, and he would have nocturnal emissions, and they would take his sperm from the nocturnal emissions and take that sperm back to the cave and use that sperm to create more and more demon children. So one author said every joy denied is a demon born. Now, if you take joy in hurting people, and that's not the joy we're talking about. We're talking about the sacred erotic, consensual adult sex, where there's no sin consciousness. There's no idea that, there's no Abrahamic God involved. When you understand the sacred erotic, like the Tantra, like the Buddhist Tantra teachers, they understand the sacred erotic. It's not a sin for them. It's a sin if you're under the Abrahamic God who hates all things human and hates all things sexual. And I could go on for 3-4 hours about that. But these guys, like Mike Bickle and all these guys, they were overtaken just like the mythos of Lilith, where she overtook Adam in the dream. And she did kick his ass after a while. So when you separate your Cain and Abel, either your Cain will kill your Abel and then he'll vow revenge, or your Abel will kill your Cain and then Cain will vow revenge. And that's what happened with all these great ministers. Show me a local church, a local Assembly of God, or a local Pentecostal holiness church that isn't full of scandal and sexual abuse. It's just the way it works. Stop calling your erotic nature sin, and it will stop being sin. But yeah, you would have to leave the Second Testament and enter the third, which is the spirit and the flesh conjoined. They fall in love with each other instead of what we see in Romans 7, where they fight. They only fight each other because you were told that they're supposed to fight each other. So when you bring your Abel and Cain together, there's no fight. But if they do fight, what is the answer? If the one kills the other, if your spirit kills your flesh, or your flesh kills your spirit, what's the answer? Here it is. Cain instinctively knew to go where? To the east. The east is the new day, where the sun rises for a new day and sets in the west for the completion of that day. And to build a city in the east. So we're constantly going to the east. We leave legalism because the legalistic nature is fear-based, and that's Cain. And it kills your Abel, and you finally realize it. So you go to the east, start building a new city, a new habitation for your mind and heart to dwell in, a new place. What is it, Ephesians 3? We are seated in heavenly places in Christ. In Acts 1, in the KJV, it uses the word habitation for Judas, that Judas might go to his own habitation. So he had, on his 3-year journey with Jesus, he had chosen to go to a place called greed and national, the type of nationalism that isn't going to allow Jesus to continue on if he's not going to be promising the state of Israel to overtake the surrounding region. Peter was like that, but he was willing to listen to Jesus, tell him he was wrong. Judas was like that. He was not willing to let Jesus tell him he was wrong about that. So he goes to the Pharisees and tells them, here's where Jesus is, give me my 30 pieces of silver, okay. Then he repents and feels bad or whatever and is killed in the field of blood, kills himself in the field of blood. And so Peter said he had to go to his own habitation, let another take his place, right? Seated in heavenly places in Christ. David said, and again, I love the King James Version is poetic. I don't ever want to take the poetic away because the poetic is the prophetic. I don't want my version of the Bible to be apostolic only. I want it to be apostolic and prophetic. Vision, apostolic vision, and I want it to be prophetic process. Vision and process. And I don't need the Bible. I went 3 years without it. I renounced it out of my system in 2012. But I came back to it to show the pattern of how they left the First Testament to enter the Second Testament. And by seeing that pattern, you can then use that pattern, since the scriptures are in you anyway. You might as well, you either leave it completely and stay mad at it the rest of your life, stay angry the rest of your life, or leave it for a few years and then come back to it, pick it up and redeem it and wash it off, clean it, and use it to transport yourself from the Second Testament to the Third Testament, which is the Martin Luther King Jr. vision. Because if you can do it, and also the sacred erotic. Sex is the greatest sin in Pentecost. Any hint of anything sexual and you're kicked out. So it is considered the greatest sin. And any disagreement with their doctrines, right? So as you use the same pattern, you see what they did, you see what they said, not so you can obey them, not so you can obey Jesus, Peter, Paul, James, Mary Magdalene, but so you can see what they were doing, what they were accomplishing in the words and works, in the things they said and did. What were they doing to bring people out of law and into grace? You can do that same exact thing if you catch the pattern, to bring people from grace to equality. And so once you achieve your equality within, Abel and Cain fuse together, they're not fighting anymore. Spirit and flesh come together and fall in love with each other. Flesh can't be angry because it's too in love with the Spirit. And the Spirit can't be dehumanizing the flesh. It can't be throwing shade. That's just the personal self, and it's always of the victim consciousness. It can't do that because it understands. He, the thought sperm, the thought vision, the thing in you that gets the soul pregnant, he can't throw shade at her. He can't ignore your internal Grecian widows. He cannot say, well, you better align with me, woman. He can't do that. He can't say the ego is evil because now he understands the ego, which is the ego. I don't mean the definition of arrogance. I mean the ego is the self-awareness. It's the navigation center. It's the dendrites of the brain, the photo imaging. It's the triggers of the emotions that, you could listen to a song and go, oh my God, that's the song that was playing in my 1985 prom, and you've transported to that experience again. The soul realm has the critical thinking skills to see, did God really say that we should not understand the difference between right and wrong? Did God really say? And after the Acts chapter 7 stoning to death of Stephen, I bet you Saul of Tarsus said, did God really say that we should kill these people because they're Christians? So Eve kicks in, it questions the soul realm, not the spirit, because the spirit can't change. I am the Lord, I change not. The spirit can't change. Adam can't change, but Eve can change. Eve is that part of you that's malleable. Eve is the void of potentialities. Eve is the power of choice. And through the serpent of wisdom, which is Eve. So really what you saw in the garden is a battle between Yahweh and Jesus. Jesus being Moses was told, put the serpent on the, exalt the serpent, and when your people in the desert get bit by serpents, they will gaze upon the serpent and the poison will not take effect. Jesus used that very exact symbology of himself. He said, when the Son of Man is lifted up on the cross, then I'll draw all men to me. All right, so that's why he said, be wise as serpents, harmless as doves. So the spirit is harmless because it can't affect change. It's just there to conform your earth and nature to its image. But what image? The image that your earth and nature gave it. Through critical thinking skills, moving from the belly of empathy, moving from the belly of human understanding, human to human understanding, which is like a cuss word. It's anathema to Christians and New Agers because they want to live only in the Spirit. They think living in the Spirit and denying humanity as illusion is a good thing. But it only works for a little while. It's good for you for a little while. It develops your spiritual abilities. It develops your spiritual discernment. It develops, you see atmospheres, you see what manner of spirit people are of. But if you stay there too long, there's going to be a war, and your Abel and your Cain are going to fight to the death. And one's going to win, the other's going to win later. If your spirit kills your flesh will kill your spirit later. Doesn't matter how much love you're experiencing, and you'll not notice it. You won't really notice it happening by the time because it's like the frog in the water, where it starts to simmer, and it's so slow. The water heating up is so slow, the frog doesn't even notice it, and then it's too late. Now it's boiling, the frog's dead. So that's what happens. That's what happened to me in 2009 or 2008, 2009. It's like the flesh started slowly coming up and taking over until I, after a grand total of 20 years of celibacy, because my spiritual parents wouldn't let me get married unless it was to this one person, this one woman who wanted nothing to do with God, church, or me. And so that's why I couldn't get married. So I was celibate. We were supposed to live a zero masturbation lifestyle, which I accomplished for a few years at one point and a few years later. And which takes everything in you. It takes everything in you to do that. You know, you're supposed to have biologically we're created for a release at times. It actually connects you to God. It connects you to your nervous system for healing. Orgasms are an essential part of us from the Creator, but they're anathema to the Christian God, the Islamic God, and the Jewish God. So the Abrahamic idea of faith, that faith is the substance, is where you just live in your spirit and you deny your humanity because you're sold a big lie. You're sold a big lie that your humanity is bad. Well, your humanity is the power of choice. Sure, you can use your soul realm to choose to be a criminal. So that means we should cancel out the soul realm and just live in the spirit. No, because you'll never be able to make another power. The same power of choice that a person can use to become a criminal, they can use that same power of choice to become virtuous and to transcend the spiritual path that they were given from their forebears. And when we get sick enough of seeing the chaff that has grown up with the wheat, that's what we do. We're like Cain, who instinctually knows to go to the east for a new day, and in that new day, Abel and Cain come together. It's in the metaphor of Jacob and Esau. It starts out, they're fighting, right? Cain and Abel fighting. Jacob and Esau are fighting. It starts out as you're identifying only as Jacob or spirit. And then a new day happens. You go to the east of a new day, and all of a sudden the scripture changes. God changes. Your identity, your identification of who you are changes. So it changes. It transfigures on that mountain, Mount of Transfiguration, from Jacob have I loved and Esau have I hated. And suddenly, it's like 2 pages later, about 4 chapters later. Now the scripture says, when Jacob looked at Esau, this is right there in the book of Genesis, Jacob looks at Esau and he says, I'm seeing the face of God. He looks at Esau. He says, it's like seeing the face of God. You know? So it's no longer my spirit hates my flesh, my spirit loves my flesh. My spirit can now see God in my human appetites, my human inclinations. My spirit can now see the face of God in the thing I once denied. The Holy Grail is not your spirit. That's ascension. The ascension path is so we remember who we were before we came to earth. But the descension path. Revelation 21, I saw the bride descend to heal the nations. The MLK vision, to heal the nations. When your spirit descends, the spirit no longer denies the flesh, but sees the face of God in the flesh. And you bring your Abel and Cain together, the 2 witnesses that had killed each other. That's why they're laying dead in the streets and everybody's celebrating. And then it says in the book of Revelation concerning the 2 witnesses, which are masculine and feminine, vision and process. Vision and process, not just vision. Thoughts become things. Vision becomes a reality. Faith is the substance. That's true. That's only true in one of the days of the Son of Man. Go to in Luke 17:22. Look at it. Go to that next day. Jesus told the scripture teachers who were fully dedicated to Yahweh, he said, you guys won't even see one of the days of the Son of Man. You won't even see one of the days because you're locked into day 0. I'm on day 1 of grace, Eventually there'll be more days. You'll do greater works. Apostles, followers, you'll do even greater works. Right? So unite the right and left hemisphere of your brain. Unite your spirit and your soul-body fusion. Your spirit awareness and your self-awareness. Start getting in the habit of calling them equally holy, equally the image of God, the masculine vision and the feminine processing, birthing center. John 16:21, you will give birth. It's good to be a manifest son of God. You are manifesting in your persona the God or the spirit that you were given in the lineage. And by the way, only the lineage from your forebears can say of you, thou art my beloved son in whom I am well pleased. Because the Pharisee had a lineage of spirit also, but that spirit wasn't saying that about Jesus. That spirit was saying, you're a demon-possessed Samaritan. He casts demons out by Beelzebub, the prince of devils. All right? So the lineage of Pentecostal holiness said of me when I was fully submitted to the apostle of our church in the Pentecostal holiness group, that spirit said of me, thou art my beloved son in whom I am well pleased. But the spirit in the Assembly of God church would not have said that about me, because we do things differently. The spirit in Scientology wouldn't have said that about me. It's a different lineage of spirit. So the lineage of spirit, once it raises you up to where you can see your wheat and chaff, it'll say to you, you are my son. You are a manifest son of God. 1 John 3:2, now are we the sons of God. Yet it does not yet appear what we shall be. Wheat and chaff haven't fully grown up yet. But when it appears, when full maturity appears, when the maturity is evident, obvious, and undeniable, then that's the Christ of your lineage appearing through the cloud of your created being. And what you've been saturating your electromagnetic field with over the past 10, 15, 20 years, that's going to be evident to people after a while. People in your sect will say, well, okay, we see the becoming process that has happened. And so a manifest son of God is great. Coming to the fullness of the measure of the stature of the Christ that you were given in your lineage from your spiritual parents was great. But Jesus spoke of another mystery. Matthew 10, you will give birth to the Son of Man. Eve's turn. It was Spirit's turn, right? To manifest itself through your flesh by moving your flesh out of the way. But now it's Eve's turn. It's the flesh turn. Now it's time for Lilith to utter the name of God. And this time not be called a demon, but be called holy because she is holy. Yeah. So the dark feminine is simply the repressed things that the Abrahamic God commanded to be done. And the days of it having to come up to take revenge are over. Okay, so your Adam and Lilith, which are made of both equally of earth according to the rabbinical stories, come together. Your Cain and Abel. The two beasts of Revelation 13, the beast in the water is Leviathan. According to Enoch 60, the beast in the water and the beast on land are Behemoth on land and Leviathan, Lady Leviathan in the water. I know Job, in the book of Job, the translators said he, referring to Leviathan, but the book of Enoch, it takes precedence there. Enoch 60, just as Adam and Eve. Well, remember there are 3 different versions of the book of Enoch. The one I read was chapter 60. I think the other one is chapter 63 or 4. But Enoch chapter 60, in the version that I read anyway, it said just as Adam and Eve were one, masculine and feminine, spirit and soul were one, and they were split apart so that they could later come back together again. So it was that Behemoth and Leviathan were one being, and God split them apart, and Behemoth was on land, spirit awareness, and Leviathan was in the depths of the water, the primordial waters of your subconscious. We react from our subconscious a lot of times. That's the Leviathan. But and then there's middle in the Middle Ages. There's a great depth of wisdom in the Middle Ages Jewish Kabbalah and various rabbinical sources where Leviathan and Behemoth they will fight, but they will ram into each other and become one. And then we eat, and then it says the Jewish people will eat from that feast. When the Leviathan and Behemoth become one, they are no longer Leviathan and Behemoth. They are one new meat that is time for you to eat dinner from. So when you're Abel and Cain, your masculine and feminine, your Adam and Eve, your spirit, your Christ and Sophia, all these are typologies of you, spirit and soul. When you're Zeus and Hecate, when you're in India, there's in the age of Aries and age of Pisces. In India, Helena Blavatsky found out that there was not just Hindus but also Aghori. The Aghori were the left-hand path. They were trying to be the opposite of the Hindus. So you've got in ancient Persia, you've got the doctrine of good thought, good will, and was it good thought, good will, good deeds? Through Zoroaster. You had Zoroaster in ancient Persia, and then you had the Yatuk and the Dinoi. Those are the people of the devil. In the West, we have Christianity and we have Satanism. See, why? Because we wouldn't bring our Abel and Cain back together. So there's going to be a stream of consciousness that is pure spirit, that is toxic because it dehumanizes everything human and everything not of your nation. And so when enough people see the toxicity in the so-called good God path, then they react to it by developing the so-called bad God, or evil God path, which isn't evil. It's just a therapeutic self-help session to rid yourself of the toxicity. But why does this have to continue on? You know, the Sufis, and then there's the people of Shaitan, Angry Manu, the Peacock Angel. What is it, the Orthodox Islam, Sunni Islam, but then there's the Yazidis. The Yazidis are kind of the opposite. They worship the Peacock Angel, who refused to serve Adam because Adam was beneath him. And so there's Islam and Yazidis. The Yazidis are considered devil worshippers. They're not. They're very virtuous, righteous people, but they understand the Peacock Angel was coming from a place of inner light that was above and beyond the Islamic tradition. So, and the collective consciousness throws a bunch of shade at the Yazidis in the various Middle Eastern regions where the Yazidis are, trying to kill them all off, create a genocide to the Yazidi people because they think they're devil worshippers. Where was I going with that? Hold on. But I think that's just an overflow of what we've been doing in the age of Pisces within ourselves, separating spirit and flesh and throwing shade at flesh as though it were of the devil, when it was really equally holy. So if you bring spirit and flesh together, enough of the masses, enough tens of thousands and more tens of thousands start doing this, as the more people start doing this, uniting the self-awareness and the spirit awareness, then we'll move beyond the seventh from Adam, which is Enoch. Enoch was the seventh from Adam, according to Genesis, so the perfection of that era. The era was walking the spirit to the negation of the flesh. And so Enoch saw this is allegory. I don't believe this really happened. I believe it was allegory. Enoch saw angels. It's talked about in Genesis 6, but the whole book of Enoch talks about this, that angels, Semjaza was the leader, also called Azazel, saw the beauty of human women. Remember I said that your spirit will eventually see the beauty of the human inclinations, human appetites, the human way of doing things, and got married and had children. And they were not evil people. It says in Genesis 6, they were men of renown. They were the great ones of the earth. They were the movers and the shakers. There's something to be gleaned from there. So Enoch was not the next level fruit. Enoch was the seventh, the perfection of Adam walking in the cool of the day, or the spirit of that era of Yahweh in the garden. So Enoch represents the fullness of the measure of the stature of Christ for the babe stage. Okay, so that's why he pronounced judgment upon that fruit that the true Eve consciousness called holy. The fruit, or the children, they called them Nephilim. They're not evil. It's just it's the third component. It's when your heaven and your earth unites, gets married, and falls in love, and has the child, which is the Son of Man. Jesus said, "Some standing here will not taste of death till they've seen the Son of Man." How do you see the Son of Man? By becoming it, by fusing your spirit and soul together, and you hang in there a while, and eventually, I'm telling you from experience, it eventually becomes a new being altogether. And that new being need not use or practice the law of attraction, because it automatically attracts the right outcome and the good outcome. It's much more creative than when I was a Pentecostal Christian using the law of faith to create good things. I created a lot of good things. My dream job at the world famous Tony's in Houston, I was a captain there. Several things were I think a direct manifestation of my spirit only walk. I'm not saying it's bad. It's really good. It's a spirit of an era. In fact, it's a powerful, really good spirit of an era. But I'm saying eventually there comes a time where you transcend Enoch, who was throwing shade at, pronouncing judgment upon that angelic human fusion. And we go beyond Enoch, and we understand that the angelic human fusion is the greatest of wisdom. It's when the sight from the top of the building, the higher sight that can see further down the road, and the sight and the experience of ground level. The serpent of wisdom is ground level, moving from the belly of compassion and seeing the treasure in others. Human to human relationship. Those two, both sights from the ground level, where you see exactly what's going on clearly. See, when you're on top of the building, you can't see what's going on ground level, so you call it illusion. If you stay there, you're going to miss out on the process of human development. But if you have equality, if you have equality within, you'll eventually have equality in society. Equality, the sight you have in your spirit, seeing far down the road. Behold, an Israelite indeed in whom is no guile. You can see all the way to the end of your life, where your future self, full maturity, your future self, 50 years from now, is looking back at you, saying, "I'm perfected. We did it. Come on, keep coming, live every day, enjoy every day, savor the moment. The destiny is in the journey, but I'm here, I am. You can see me, can't you? An Israelite indeed, in whom is no guile." All your shadow work was done. All of the corrections that needed to happen were corrected. You got your generational blessing, and you had your generational curse removed by seeing those things that needed to change on the Mount of Transfiguration. And so, yeah, the spirit eye does see that, the end from the beginning, the complete you right now, so that you can empower that future you in the now. But the ground level you can see what's going on in your pain. The ground level you can be present to your orgasm, to your ecstasy, to your joy, to your human joys, to the taste of food, the taste of the espresso, the scent of that cigar, the being present to your romantic partner, to their needs, and you're giving them what they need is your greatest delight. You don't even consider it a sacrifice at all. Now, if you're dwelling only in the spirit, and your partner needs something that demands a little bit more of your time and energy than you were planning on, now, that's a sacrifice. I don't know. I think that's your stuff you're projecting, and that's why your marriages end. But when you dwell in the spirit eye and in the Adam's eye and Eve's eye together as one, and they're in love with each other, then you're so humanly aware, and you're so humanly in love with your human partner and the human community, that you'll be an activist for marginalized people. You'll clothe, feed, and visit the least of these. And in so doing, you did that to Jesus. The Christ in you was fed. The Christ in you was visited. The Christ in you and in those people were visited, fed, and helped. You're the Good Samaritan that did something for the beaten and robbed man, rather than the scribe and priest who walked on by. So the days of Enoch, that is just the angelic part of you only, are over. So the days of I am not in the current of consciousness of Joe Dispenza or Esther Hicks. I am in the neck what comes after that. They are like the Enoch for their time. They're throwing shade at dealing with the facts on ground level. If you don't know the truth won't make you free. If you call it all illusion, you'll miss the development of the human part of you, so that the spirit has nothing to land, no landing place. So when you develop your hobbies, work ethic, romance, whatever you and your partner, whatever your arrangement is, you stay faithful to that. You call it sacred. You call it just as holy as your meditation life is holy. When you bring the two together, your Abel and Cain together, they can't fight because they love each other. Your Leviathan and your Behemoth. You're in one angle, which is your Christ and the bride, or the Spirit. In the Revelation 21, it says the Spirit and the bride say, "Come." Thanks, guys. I know you get.